The Steelers won the AFC North last season, but if they wanted to become legitimate contenders, standing still was not an option. Omar Khan and this front office knew exactly where their roster needed to be improved, and this offseason they attacked those weaknesses head-on. From key additions on the roster to major schematic changes on both sides of the ball, here are the 5 biggest ways the Steelers got better heading into the 2026 season. Number 5, the addition of Michael Pittman Jr., filling a role that the Steelers have been looking for a long time. Pittman will easily be the best secondary wide receiver option the Steelers have had since Juju and Antonio Brown were paired together. Deontay Johnson and George Pickens never produced at the same time, and the Steelers traded Pickens away shortly after acquiring Metcalf from the Seahawks. A year ago, DK was the only viable receiving option, with Calvin Austin never developing into the guy Steelers fans were hoping for. The rest of the receiver room was full of role players and special teamers. Metcalf is a good receiver, but he needs another established weapon on the other side to command some attention. Pittman has been a solid, reliable wideout during his 6-year career in Indy, producing despite having a different starting quarterback heading into every season of his career. Aaron Rodgers is the best QB Pittman will have ever played with, and having Metcalf and Pittman together in this offense could lead to some special things in Pittsburgh. Pittman undoubtedly makes this team better than they were a year ago. Next up is the signing of Jamel Dean to play the cornerback 2 position alongside Joey Porter Jr. Similar to what we just talked about with Pittman, Jamel Dean is filling a role that the Steelers have been trying to fill for a while. JPJ has developed nicely into a shutdown primary corner, but he is yet to play with a solid number 2. In 2024, they've tried Patrick Peterson at 33 years old, and that was a miserable failure. Last year, the Steelers added Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay to buff the cornerback room. However, after several injuries to safeties, Ramsey had to slide to safety, and Darius Slay was another late career flop. The Steelers clearly prioritized this role again during the offseason, locking up the best cornerback on the market, Jamel Dean, to a 3-year deal worth just over $12 million a year. Dean has been a full-time starter in Tampa for 5 years and has quietly become one of the best corners in football. I think the Dean signing with the Steelers was one of the most underrated pickups of the whole offseason in the NFL. Adding Dean to a secondary with Joey Porter Jr., Jalen Ramsey, and Deshaun Elliott is going to be a fun watch. At number 3, we're going to have the Steelers' new offensive scheme. For years, Steelers have watched an offense that felt stuck in the past. Tomlin was one of the best defensive coaches of his generation, but throughout the tenure in Pittsburgh, it never really felt like he had an offensive-minded head coach that gelled with him in the offense. That's going to change with McCarthy this year. McCarthy has built some of the NFL's most explosive passing offenses, and he is not afraid to attack defenses vertically. During training camp, DK Metcalf said that he expects the Steelers to take far more deep shots and use the middle of the field much more than they have in recent years. That's exactly what we've seen from McCarthy-led offenses throughout his career in Green Bay and Dallas, and I think that philosophy is going to benefit players like Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington, because Aaron Rodgers has always been at his best when he can attack the middle of the field and involve some tight ends. Combined with weapons like DK and Michael Pittman Jr., this offense finally has the personnel to stress defenses at every level. For the first time in a long time, I think the Steelers fans are going to watch an offense that actually feels modern, more explosive, more aggressive, and much harder to defend than what we've seen over the last few years. At number 2, I think the Steelers also got better schematically defensively. Mike Tomlin is one of the greatest defensive coaches ever, but even the best coaches can benefit from a fresh perspective. One thing that always stuck with me was when Julian Edelman said on his podcast that he loves playing against the Steelers because they ran the seam defense every single week. Whether that's completely fair or not, we don't know, but Pittsburgh's scheme had become predictable at times, and that's why I think bringing in Patrick Graham could be one of the most underrated moves of the offseason. Graham has coordinated defenses in both Miami and Vegas, but he's never really had the talent he's inheriting in Pittsburgh. This is easily the best defense he's ever had the opportunity to coach. And Graham's defenses are always built around disguising coverages, mixing pressure packages, and moving star players around to attack offensive weaknesses. We've already heard TJ Watt and Jalen Ramsey talk about being used in different ways during training camp, and I think that's exactly what this defense needed. The Steelers already had one of the league's better defenses. Now they've paired elite talent with a fresh defensive philosophy, and I think that's a combination that could turn this unit into one of the NFL's very best in 2026. And finally, the number one reason I think the Steelers are better heading into this year is the comfortability of their starting quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, and I'll break that down into 3 parts. First is Rodgers entering the second year with most of the key pieces on the offense, like Metcalf, Jalen Warren, Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, and the big boys up front. Another camp and offseason to build chemistry on the field and off the field should be great for this team. Secondly, having Rodgers back with the coach he spent 13 seasons with and won a Super Bowl with. Having an extended relationship with Mike McCarthy, like Rodgers has, mitigates the negative effects felt when hiring a new head coach like Pittsburgh is. Rodgers mentioned that he was pretty much done after the Tomlin retirement, but when it was McCarthy who got the job, he was inspired to play again. The third reason Rodgers will be more comfortable is because he has another year off the Achilles injury. At this point in Aaron Rodgers' career, he doesn't really rely on bursts of speed or athleticism, and he just needs enough mobility to avoid the rush and get his throws off. As we've seen with athletes in several sports coming off of Achilles injuries, it takes several years to feel like themselves again. Overall, I expect Rodgers to have a much better year than he did a year ago. And all in all, I think Steelers fans should be much more optimistic about this season than in 2025, as the roster is much improved, and schematically, both units should be much more decisive and productive. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe and comment on what you want to see next.